Eveleigh Railway Yards. It's been closed since the late 1980s, yet people keep coming back. Why? For over 100 years, Eveleigh was the home of New South Wales rail assembly and maintenance. A lot can happen in 100 years. In the 1800s, rail had become the lifeline of New South Wales. There were no highways, no semi-trailers. Things had to go by rail. Pressure to expand the railway lines further through the state was great. Sydney was where all state railway lines led to. So it was in Sydney, next door to Redfern Railway Station, that the New South Wales government built the Eveleigh Railway Yards. The yards were built between 1880 and 1886. By 1900, 2,500, or nearly 10% of the state's entire railway staff were employed there. The workshops assembled and maintained rolling stock and steam locomotives between 1907 and 1925. They also made locomotives. When manufacturing was shifted to Chullora after the 1920s, Eveleigh concentrated on repair and maintenance. Work at Eveleigh was hard. Sometimes it was dangerous. The conditions were unpleasant, yet people worked there for a lifetime.
In the old steam days, the railway made everything. There wasn't one thing in the railway that wasn't made by the railway men. And we had thousands of men here working on all these things, you know. Probably the only things we ever bought outside was say, scrubbing brushes and split pins and things like that. But everything else was made in the railway. And there was thousands of people, you know, gainfully employed.
Working with steam engines was dirty, noisy and dangerous, especially in the smoke boxes.
I used to come to work of a Monday morning with clean overalls, and an hour after I'd put them on, they're as bad as, like, if it was Friday afternoon, you know, they'd be rotten dirty all within an hour, you know, because of all this black, sooty stuff all coming down over you all the time, you know, and you used to have to wear little paper hats we used to make out of the Sydney Morning Herald.
The conditions were really unbelievable we worked in. Sometimes it was that smoky. The place would be full of smoke from all the steam engines belching out smoke. You couldn't see 3 foot in front of you, sort of thing. It was very dark. There was no lights in them days. We worked with little kerosene lamps.
Worked under shocking conditions, and I suppose to a certain extent you had the fear of God in you. If you lost your job, you didn't have much chance of getting another one, so I think we used to stick together more in those days, and as I say, there was some hard work, and the boys would help each other out.
Well, terrific fellows to work with. You come here, although you worked, you know, under terrible conditions, you never stop laughing because the antics they used to get up to, and that, I think, you know, sort of really made the place, you know, and that's what made you sort of feel that you didn't mind working in a place like this, you know.
Until the 1950s, workers only had buckets to wash up in, and their pay was docked if they were found washing up during working hours.
3 minutes to 5, then you could go over, put your docket on the board and wash your hands. But if you got caught washing up the board, then they used to kick the bucket down or dock you, and you know.
If you wanted hot water, you used to get a big nut, put it in the boiler, make a fire, where they used to heat, put the rivets.
Put it in the bucket?
Put it in the bucket.
when you walked up the stairs, when you went to up there was a little cubicle up there and a bloke used to sit in there. And you had to put your token in. Everybody had a token with their number on it. You had to put the token into the bloke and you had 3 minutes in the toilet. And if you weren't out in 3 minutes, you used to come hammering on the door. And then and if you went twice, you got docked.
Hard work and the political turbulence of the first half of the century meant strong politics at Eveleigh. Before the 1880s, employees formed benefit societies to help deal with accidents and deaths that occurred at work. Unions of boilermakers, engine drivers, firemen, other railway and tramway workers launched many campaigns from Eveleigh. The struggle between management and unions became more ferocious. In 1917, the department's managers introduced a new system of recording how long it took workers to do different jobs. Workers believed the managers aimed to speed them up. They feared they would turn them into machines and slaves. They struck. On August the 2nd, 5,780 workers of the Randwick Tramway Workshop and the Eveleigh Railway Workshops left work. By the end of the week, 10,000 were involved. The strike then spread to other unions in Newcastle, Broken Hill, Bulli, Wollongong, Lithgow, Bathurst, Goulburn, and Victoria and Queensland. By the 22nd of October, approximately 97,500 workers had become involved. Massive demonstrations were held, but the government refused all appeals to fix the crisis. It was the largest industrial dispute in Australian history, but they were defeated. The strike ended on the 10th of September, when railway workers returned to work under the card system. Those who stayed on strike throughout became known as lily whites because they wore buttons with a white lily. J.B. Chifley, later Prime Minister, said that it left a legacy of bitterness and a trail of hate. Many political careers were born in the dark cold sheds. 25 Eveleigh workers became Labour members of Parliament. J.S.T. McGowan, a boilermaker at the railway workshops, became the member for Redfern in the New South Wales Parliament, a seat he held from 1891 to 1917. William John McKell worked there as a boilermaker between 1913 and 1914. He won the seat of Redfern at the age of 25. In 1941, McKell became the Premier of New South Wales, and in 1947 he was appointed Governor-General. J.J. Carl, the son of a railway worker, was apprenticed as a fitter at Eveleigh in 1906 at the age of 15. In August 1917 he was sacked for his involvement with the New South Wales general strike. Carl became a minister in the McKell government, and later, during the 1950s, he became Premier of New South Wales. In 1915, Eddie Ward worked at Eveleigh, making and repairing tarpaulins. He later became the federal member for the seat of East Sydney. Eveleigh Railway Works employed thousands of workers, many of whom lived nearby. There was a strong relationship between the works and the surrounding suburbs.
I remember it from when I was 5 or 6 years old. I used to come down here from Taree on holidays, and it wasn't a trip to Sydney unless you came past Eveleigh and saw all the steam locos.
Eveleigh Railway Yards had a long tradition of multiculturalism. Its workforce included Indigenous Australians as well as migrants from all over the world. The Eveleigh shop committees, together with the unions, helped the European migrants who were employed in increasing numbers from the early 1950s. The Eveleigh rank and file shop committees supported numerous campaigns to improve conditions for Indigenous Australians. Women were also employed there as upholsteresses and cleaners during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and as clerks from the 1920s, as munition workers between 1942 and 43, and as industrial nurses and train cleaners after the Second World War. Agnes Mary Lyons was an industrial nurse at Eveleigh. She was one of the founding members of the New South Wales College of Nursing and the Industrial Nurses Branch of the New South Wales Nurses Association. She was awarded an MBE for her services to nursing. In 1935, the Railways Department decided to add diesel engine trains to the passenger rolling stock.
Steam's the ultimate power. I mean, the steam engine's alive. And, but progress, we have to put up with it, I guess. We can't live in the past.
Dieselisation would have a profound long-term impact on the workshops because it meant a shift from customised, small batch production techniques to the philosophy and methods of mass production. Eveleigh's life was extended for some time, even though the numbers employed there continued to decrease. The inevitable happened. Between 1986 and 1989, the Eveleigh Railway workshops closed their doors. For over a century, the site had been the heart and soul of the massive New South Wales railways.
We're just being told that there's a job at Dieselisation for us and there's no job here for us. I'm just bewildered, you know, at coming here all the years I have. It'd be very strange to me going somewhere else.
Well, I've been here in this one shed since 1952, and some of the others have been here longer than me, and it's a rather sad day. We're parting company. I've just said goodbye to chaps I've known for 30 years, and I'll probably never see them again. They're going to different localities, and our paths will probably never cross again.
Amidst these industrial ruins, a new dream unfolded. The dream was to create a science and technology park where Australians could develop their ideas into marketable products. Today, the Australian Technology Park is home to cutting-edge research and development from the University of Sydney, the University of Technology Sydney, and the University of New South Wales, as well as private companies from Australia and around the world.
The companies here are all individual entities unto themselves, but there is an energy and potential beyond just those individual entities, I think.
So we have a flexibility here to create a virtual organisation that can build almost anything, and they're all highly motivated people to try to make a success.
New products are being made in the shell of the old Eveleigh buildings. But now, everything is different. There are fewer people, and the work is different. Steam power has given way to computer power. During 2000, the Sydney Harbour Foreshores Authority became the owners of the Australian Technology Park, aiming to promote the Eveleigh precinct's history, its business and local community. Now there is a proposal to transform the Eveleigh Carriage Works and the paint shop into a transport heritage park. After more than 100 years, people will still come to Eveleigh.